Welcome to another Third Apron podcast. I'm your host, Yossi Goslin, here again with my co-host, Sam Quinn. And we are continuing our division series where we're going through the preview the trade deadline for each division. We've already done the East teams and one in the West. And today we're going to continue with the Northwest division. The Southwest division in the West, which had a lot of timely news earlier today. As of the recording, this is Friday night, and a lot of very consequential news in the Southwest division. And since we go in alphabetical order, we're going to start with the Dallas Mavericks, who got quite the one of the worst set of news they can possibly get to kick off this last 25-day stretch or so ahead of the trade deadline. Anthony Davis has ligament damage in his hands after last night's game with the Jazz. I saw the video. It's kind of hard to see like how much impact there was. It looks like he just got bumped, but his hand is it's so injured that he's gonna contemplate surgery. He's gonna get a second opinion. So I think the reporting said that he's out for like 4 to 6 weeks at least if he doesn't do surgery. But Sam, I think it's safe to say that this season's probably over with or without surgery, which means he's very, very likely not getting traded this trade deadline now.
Well, somebody who didn't work hard enough. I've got a bunch of Anthony Davis trades that make sense even in context of the injury. So a couple of things change here, right? Number one, there will be no extension. Nobody is extending Anthony Davis with this injury. Thankfully, it's a hand injury. That's much less scary than like if this had been a knee or a calf or a hamstring, right? Like you feel relatively confident that a hand injury is a one-off thing. Lower body is a lot scarier, but there will be no extension. He's going to have to prove it with whichever team he's playing for next year. This puts Dallas in kind of an interesting position because something we'd been talking about all year was their need to tank because they control their first round pick this year, but they don't control it in the next 4 years after that. It goes to Charlotte, I believe Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and Houston. I don't know the exact order, but those are their next 4 first round picks, 2 of which are swaps, 2 of which are outrights. But now you can tank without trading Anthony Davis because he's going to be out. So in theory, you could keep Anthony Davis, still tank, and then just kind of try to run a 2 timelines thing where next year Kyrie and Anthony Davis come back and you just say, you know what, we understand that they're not compatible with Cooper Flag's timeline, but we got the pick. That's what matters. We can't get really valuable assets for AD anymore, so we might as well kind of just go for it. That wasn't really in the cards before the injury. Now it might be their best option. We'll talk through everything, but they might just look at this and say, hey, Cooper Flag's going to be great next year. Maybe we stay healthy and we can make a lot of noise with some minor adjustments. But the kinds of teams that make sense for an Anthony Davis trade are no longer teams that are trying to win now. There was that quote floating around. I can't remember where it came from this week. I think it might have been Sam Amick. Maybe it was Mark Stein. I don't know. Where every team in the East thinks it's an Anthony Davis away from reaching the finals. That is obviously no longer the case. As we were planning this podcast, I was thinking about springing a Knicks trade on you. The Knicks are not going to trade Karl Anthony Towns for Anthony Davis when Anthony Davis is just probably not going to play again this year. I do, however, think that there is a different set of teams that might look at Anthony Davis as an interesting longer-term play that have less at stake this season for whom a trade might make sense. The valuation is going to be lower. They are not going to get a massive haul. They would still get positive value, but any notions that they're going to get, like the idea that they were going to get that New Orleans Milwaukee pick was always laughable. That was never going to happen. But Ricochet was on the table. Maybe. We don't know. Like that wasn't crazy is my point. Other first round picks from Atlanta would have been feasible. I think now what you're probably looking at if you trade him before the deadline is decent matching salary and maybe 1 first round pick, right? Like, does that feel reasonable to you?
If it's from a team that has a lot of first round picks and it's like a lower quality one, then sure. So I guess you're alluding to the Hawks trading maybe that the lesser first round pick they have.
Yeah, but I don't think the Hawks are really necessarily in the mix now because I think their idea of getting Anthony Davis was trying to win this year. I think the way the Hawks would look at this is they could revisit Anthony Davis in the offseason when they know where their pick is going to be from New Orleans, when they have a better sense of what the free agent market is going to look like. They can kind of weigh their options and maybe reconsider Anthony Davis later. The teams that I have in front of me for Anthony Davis are teams who were not thinking about this year anyway. So they're thinking about this as a slightly longer term play. Do you want me to just get into some of the ideas that I had?
Yeah, let's get through it. I didn't touch on this at all. I'll tell you what I think because I was gonna mainly get into everything else, like what the other players are. But yeah, let's get into this. Try to sell me on this.
Okay. Anthony Davis to the Brooklyn Nets for Nick Claxton, Terrence Mann, and 1 first-round pick. I can't read my own screenshot. I can't remember which pick it was. Next year, the 2027, the higher of Houston's or New York's. So basically, you get Nick Claxton, replacement center, and you get 1 not great first-round pick.
I don't see the Nets doing that.
You don't see the Nets doing that, really? You think the Mavericks would do it?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's amazing for the Mavs. That's such a great way to get out of that.
The Nets, this would do a few things for the Nets. Number one, help them tank this year because you get off of Claxton. But then you could kind of move forward next year thinking like Anthony Davis is going to help us win. They're probably not going to try to tank. We've talked about them potentially trading for their own first-round pick back, but as of now, they don't have it. If they don't want to tank, and there might be ownership pressure, by the way, not to tank next year, to be good next year. I think that's not a crazy idea for the Nets. I think that's the sort of thing you could do to like sort of reestablish your credibility around the league with agents and kind of say like, we're going to try to be a playing team. And like, maybe then it makes sense for us to trade for somebody else, or maybe our young guys develop faster than expected. Like, I'm not saying you tack an extension on, but I don't think this is crazy as a, let's try to win next year sort of thing.
Let's say they are trying to win next year. I kind of think the Nets can look at this and say, does Anthony Davis really make us that much better? Where would we want to part with Nick Claxton now, who is making a big step this year? Maybe he's not going to ever reach the heights of Anthony Davis, but moving forward, Nick Claxton could be better than Anthony Davis pretty soon. So even if they are trying to be good next year, I could see them looking at that as a potential downgrade in the coming years.
It's a risk. Like this is definitely it's a risk. I have nothing really else to add to that. But I think some team is going to look at Anthony Davis as a risk worth taking.
I'll just say this about the Nets is, again, even if they are trying to make the next step towards a play-in, I just think they're a little more behind. I know we just saw the Wizards do it, but there's so many guys that you can look at this year who made a lot of nice strides. The Nets are like just barely getting their first prospects in the door. I think they've got some time until they're like in a spot where they're ready to make that type of trade.
I have a team that's a little bit further along.
All right.
Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell to the Charlotte Hornets for Miles Bridges, Josh Green, Pat Connaughton, and Dallas's own 2027 first-round pick back. The Hornets, their idea here would be, if they're keeping Anthony Davis, that first-round pick might not be super valuable next year. So why don't we turn it into Anthony Davis, the exact kind of player that we need as a front court defender? We can put all of this shooting around him. We're already playing pretty well. Like, I think there's a chance that they make the play-in as soon as this year. If you get Anthony Davis, like, you could be a playoff team next year, and you could like actually start to build a winning culture. But you'd also quietly be getting rid of a lot of guys this year and maybe setting yourself up for one last nice lottery pick. You're not giving up any of your own picks. You're not really giving up much future flexibility. You're just kind of hitting the fast forward button a little bit because this organization has been so non-competitive for so long. Maybe lean into the fact that things are starting to work out a little bit.
I'm a little intrigued. It reminds me of when the Hornets signed Al Jefferson back in 2013, 2014. And
deep cut.
Yeah, well, and he was so good. That was like his farewell year. He was an all-star. I think he was an all-star that year, or was
he was all NBA third team, I think.
So yeah,
I'd have to look that up, but yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I think that was not the last time they made the playoffs, but second to last time they last made it 2016. So it'd be a similar thing, but I think it feels kind of like an MJ move. If he still owned the team, absolutely he would go for that. I could see the Hornets making a trade like the Wizards, go bring in a big man that can help push them. But a couple things. I think also kind of like with the Nets, I don't know how organizationally they feel about their core right now, other than Con Knipple. There's still a lot of questions with Miller. We know there's some LaMelo Ball speculation. Maybe there could be interest in a separation there. Like, and then everyone else are still just a lot of question marks. Like, they draft a lot of nice guys, but we still don't know what exactly they're gonna be, how what they're if they're gonna be more than just role players. So I I don't know if they feel ready to make that type of move just yet, because they don't even know. I don't think they know exactly who they want to stick with. But then the other part of that is, if they want to get a big man to help balance the team out, I think you could probably go with a lot other younger, cheaper options that would make a lot more sense. So I understand the buy low aspect. They're not really trading anything. None of these players are sending out have positive value. I'm sure. I feel like they could even get away with without trading the Mavs that pick back. But I think they would just probably go for someone else, like, just as an example, Claxton. Even if they wanted like a veteran, Sabonis, who makes a lot less money, I think that even makes a little more sense. So I like where you're going with this one, but those are my counters to that.
Yeah, my thing is you're not trading for Anthony Davis thinking like he's going to be on the team forever. I'm thinking of him as like a drag us up a little bit, and then we can trade for the next younger guy in a few years because we are keeping all of our own picks. I feel very good about Con Knipple and Brandon Miller. LaMelo is another question, but I feel like in Con and in Brandon Miller, they do have two cornerstone players. Plus, how dare you disrespect Musa Diabate by not mentioning him? I think having Musa and Anthony Davis together defensively would be super fun. I would love to see lineups like that. I think there's something to this, and I think you can figure when you factor in the fact that you're still going to have a good pick this year. I think you could add one more signature piece through the draft that way. Look at this for 2 years, make the playoffs, and then kind of figure out what do we actually need, who's in our core there, because you can't really evaluate who's in your core if you're only playing low stakes regular season games. I think you kind of need to be in the play-in in the playoffs for a year or two, and then you kind of figure it out. So I like that. Next one, the Chicago Bulls. It's the same basic idea. Nikola Vucevic, Patrick Williams, and Kobe White for Anthony Davis. The Mavs get Kobe White in as a younger guy that they could probably keep long term. We think they would. They get off the Patrick Williams contract, which is nice, and they trade Vucevic, which would tank this year's team because they just have no big men. But you have Anthony Davis back next year after presumably picking relatively highly this year.
So this one's interesting to me. Definitely more likely than the other two. I could see the Bulls having interest in Anthony Davis regardless. And with the way the season's going right now, as I checked Tankathon, they are in the play-in still. They've lost 3 in a row. That could change depending what happens with the Bucks and the Hornets, obviously, who we just talked about. I could get behind it with the idea that you bring him in. You're going to tank for one last lottery pick, try to get a good player with that, and then you go into next year with AD at the 5, your lottery pick, your backcourt, and Buzelis as your core. Plus, maybe they could get another guy because they're going to have right now, like, I don't know, 50-ish million dollars in cap space projected. They're probably not going to get anybody with that, and they're probably not going to get anyone as good as Anthony Davis. So if you can get him now for that, you're not really giving up anything valuable at all. I could get behind it.
I think the brilliance of this is that it would go one of two ways. Either Anthony Davis would be healthy and awesome, and you could reinvigorate basketball in Chicago, and it would be very cool, it'd be very fun. You're not going to be a championship contender, but it would be fun. Or Anthony Davis gets hurt, and you just have $50 million in dead money to him with no front court. And then you would just be awful and get another lottery pick, which we frankly think they should probably do, right? Like, they don't have a core, except for maybe Modest Buzelis. They don't have a core young guy on that team. So I like the idea of them doing something that's high risk, high reward. Those are the AD teams that I think make sense in the light of the injury. What other Mavericks players do you want to talk about? I think I'm going to disagree on some of the places that you're going next, but bring up whoever else you want to talk about.
So I think that for the most part, this does change their deadline quite a bit. Maybe there is an AD trade like the one you mentioned on the table, but I think I'm going to pull up their cap sheet. Anthony Davis, let's just for this exercise rule him out that he's not going to get traded. Same with Kyrie Irving, where they reportedly don't even want to trade him. But even if they did, it's going to be very hard with the injury. Still no timetable on his return. Even the very optimistic ones from last offseason say that he would come back in January. Well, here we are, and he's not close to coming back. And then PJ Washington cannot be traded. So that leaves you with Klay Thompson, Daniel Gafford, Caleb Martin, Najee Marshall, D'Angelo Russell. Those are the main guys that you're probably going to hear in whose names we're going to hear in trade rumors. But there's basically the calculus is this: try to get positive value for whichever of these players you can, which to me it's mainly Daniel Gafford and Najee Marshall, and try to get under the tax. I think that's like objectives 1A and 1B. There's 17 million over the tax. So I think this is going to be the bigger priority now. Try to do those. It would have been much easier if you could do an Anthony Davis trade, and maybe it's still out there that could help with that. So you might have to give up positive value, as in you, instead of getting positive value for these players, maybe you have to sacrifice that in the deal. So the value you're getting is savings. That's what would probably happen in a 2-team type of deal. Like if you have to work with the Nets to get off some a bad contract, that's going to cost you something, or maybe you just don't get something back if it's Gafford, for example. But that's why you want to try to make the trade as big as possible. The more teams you get involved, the better chance that you don't have to sacrifice value, the more likely you are to have a team who will take on the money instead. So I think that's the priority now. And those are the two players that really come to mind the most for me. As far Gafford, we've talked about him quite a bit. I think we've named 10 plus teams that can make sense for him. We haven't really gotten into Marshall though. Very interesting guy.
I want to stop you for a second. I actually disagree with you on 2 important points. I don't think you can trade Daniel Gafford because I don't think you can trust Derek Lively to stay healthy. How many games do you think Derek Lively has played in his career?
Like 100?
98 out of 202. He has played less than half of Dallas's games since being drafted. He was great as a rookie. We have barely seen him since. I don't think you can just rely on Derek Lively to be the center of the future. I think you have to keep Daniel Gafford with the idea that if Lively comes back next year and looks really good and looks healthy and just generally has a better long-term prognosis, then you maybe reevaluate. But if you're thinking there's a chance you trade Anthony Davis in the offseason, you have to have Gafford available because you have to have a center somewhere on your team. As far as ducking the tax goes, they're 16.8 million above the line. That is not an insignificant amount of money to dump. Now, they paid the tax last year and they paid it 3 years ago. So they would not be a repeater tax team this year. They wouldn't be one next year, would they?
Next year they would.
Oh, they would?
But okay, in all likelihood, they'll. Yeah, but to your defense, in all likelihood, they won't pay the tax next year.
Right.
In which case, it won't. Avoiding the repeater tax won't matter.
But my ultimate point here is you have Cooper Flagg in the first year of a rookie deal, and the second most important player on your team is the lottery pick you're going to take in June, who will have 4 more years on his rookie deal. So in theory, you could set this up where you don't pay anything to get off of anybody, but because Flagg and that rookie year is so cheap, as money comes off, you could view year 3 of Flagg and year 4 of Flagg as your tax reset years where you're below the tax in those 2 years. The clock is totally reset. And then in year 5 for Flagg, when he's making the max, then you can kind of start spending again with less fear of the repeater. So I don't think, given how far above they are and the fact that their most valuable assets are on rookie deals, that it really makes sense for them to force the issue on ducking the tax.
So for the tax issue, you're right. I agree with you on that, mainly because the repeater tax isn't going to be an issue anytime soon. But I'm just looking at that lens of the typical NBA owner that most likely they're going to want to avoid the tax. They have a $32 million tax bill for a team that's going to miss the playoffs. Ownership probably won't feel it's justified,
Oh,
and there could be an objective. That's just like a typical owner thing. Just we got
do
to
you
get
want to
them
know
to the
why I
tax.
disagree with you?
Why?
Because that ownership group got so much bad press for the Luka trade that if they make a bad basketball move for the sake of ducking the tax, they don't want the bad press, right? Like we're hearing that they're afraid to trade Anthony Davis because of the backlash of the Luka trade and like the bad PR of trading Anthony Davis for one pick or like one pick and one good young player when you traded Luka to get him. I don't think they're going to want to deal with the bad PR, especially if doing it in season. If you're doing it in the offseason and it's part of some grander strategy, I think that's an easier sell. I don't think ownership is going to want the bad PR of just making a tax sucking trade that doesn't make basketball sense. That being said, before we get into Najee Marshall, is there any particular Gafford trade that you want to suggest? Is there a team you like?
I like Cleveland a lot as part of a bigger trade that sends Allen elsewhere. We've talked about that both in private and on the show. Um, I don't think it's so much about the trade. I think it's the destination. There's so many teams that make sense for him. I don't really have one that come to mind other than Cleveland. I would really like to see them try to replace Allen with him.
Indiana, Boston, like there's really not a shortage. A lot of teams need center. The Lakers, if this goes into the offseason, but I suspect if they don't trade him at the deadline, they're probably not trading him in the offseason either. So there's no shortage of options here. Any team that needs a center, his contract is affordable enough. His playing style is portable enough. I don't think they'd have any trouble trading him. I actually, with Najee Marshall, had a little bit of a struggle finding the right team because every team that I wanted to send him to just had nothing to trade. And the Mavs are so close to the apron or the second apron hard cap that, like, I looked at the Lakers, but the Lakers only have 1 round pick to trade. And also, like, Maxi Kleba makes $2 million more than Najee Marshall, and the Mavericks can't deal with that. There were a lot of teams that made sense for Najee where that issue came up. The team I ultimately settled on, could you do something with the Clippers for Brook Lopez and a bunch of second round picks?
That's interesting. I did once consider if they would swap Derrick Jones for Najee Marshall. The Mavs just get Derrick Jones back.
But wouldn't that the
Obviously,
hard cap
different.
issue? Like, it
Oh
doesn't
no,
Jones make more?
I'm just talking about before Luka even got
Hmm,
traded. I was thinking maybe
gotcha.
that could be something that they look at. Yeah, Najee Marshall would be nice for the Clippers. What is their second round pick situation right now? Figured they got to trade at
Uh,
least one to get that done.
they have several. Like, I think they have four that they can trade. So some of them are much
Yeah.
later in the future. But they have second round picks to trade. That's not a huge issue. That's doable.
I is Najee Marshall. We saw a lot of guys, role players, go for 3 second round picks. Do you think he's worth that much? We still don't know what the market is for those types of players because the first role player trade hasn't happened yet. But I feel like it's between 2 and 3.
I think, yeah, I would happily pay 3 second round picks, assuming the salary wasn't important. Like if I was just trading dead money, yeah, I think the defense is so valuable. I also think he's better on ball than he gets credit for. He's not a great shooter, but he's also played most of his career in New Orleans and then this dysfunctional Dallas situation. I do wonder if with better shot creation, he could be an average-ish shooter. And then the extra like little bit he can do on the ball is just more valuable now than it was during the era of heliocentrism. So I would be pretty happy to pay 2 3 second round picks for him. The
Right.
contract is low. Like how many teams just need an extra big body on the wing? Like anybody in the league could use Najee Marshall, and many teams can make a $9 million salary work.
Yeah. A lot of teams still can fit him into their mid level if it's been untouched. I expect. I don't know. Do you think I feel like there is some truth to some of these reports about how attached the Mavs are to some of their guys. Do you think it's possible they just hold on to him just because?
Well, they don't have a GM. Like that should be the big issue, right? Like we don't know who's making the decision. So I can't sit here and say anything. Like if they hire somebody from the outside, then this offseason there might be a fire sale. If they're just promoting Ricciardi and Finley and they're going to do the co-GM thing, or if Cuban's there and they're like, we don't know who's making the decision. So I can't really say.
What I mean by that is Cooper Flag's your best player, and between active players, I think Najee Marshall's their second best player right now. Is that a stretch to say?
I'm so far behind on their injuries that like I wouldn't say that, but I'd have to check who's healthy and who's available.
He's up there, so
yeah, I think he's good. Yes, he's a good NBA player.
So, anything else on the Mavs? Or if not, I do want to share one thing about Anthony Davis before we move on to the next team.
Go ahead, I'm done.
My friend shared this with me. I'm switching to the browser cam. This is a Reddit post about Anthony Davis's injuries. Hold on, I'm going to try to make it so you can see it. Here we go. You see it?
I see it, but blurry. You're going to have to read this to me.
So essentially, so here's what it says. The title is, does Anthony Davis have the greatest injury bag of all time? This is by Reddit user OK Reaction 201. Says, obviously, AD is quite infamous for his injury history. So I was wondering how deep his bag was for injuries. And after looking at Fox Sports AD injury log, I found the following. So it's a long list of 51 different types of injuries that Anthony Davis has suffered. And the amount of times he's been ruled out of a game with it, or I just, like, the amount of time he's had this specific injury, I suppose. Says over his career, he's had 51 unique injuries and a total of 296. I was thinking about his injury issues over the past week, even before this, where I feel that with him, you think about all his injuries, and he's never had a major injury, as in like he's never torn his ACL, he's never tore his Achilles, he's never had anything like that. It's just a bunch of small to moderate to like borderline severe injuries that never were career threatening, but strong enough where he has to just miss so much time. Like last season, he had this groin injury, or no, it was an abdominal. I forgot what it was.
It was an abdominal last year, but it had been groin in the past.
Yeah, and that was, we didn't know if it was season ending, but it dragged so long that it became that. I feel like he's had other types of like that where we didn't know at the time if it's going to shut him down for a long time, and we just had to do the waiting game. Just like a very interesting collection of injuries for Davis. I never really thought about the whole big picture of how many injuries he's had, but like just after this hand injury, it just got me thinking like, yeah, there is some of that issue where I know there was reporting from Brett Siegel a couple months ago about his time leaving before he left the Lakers. They were trying to trade him anyways because they didn't feel like he was conditioning well enough, and that led to a lot of injuries. But then he also has a lot of freak injuries too, like last night's hand injury. So just is there anyone comparable all time with a guy who gets injured quite like this?
Not at the top of my head, though. I will say, I think this was a few years ago. I remember John Hollinger saying this on a podcast, but I think it was jokingly, but it like kind of rang true. At what point does Anthony Davis start to worry about all the radiation from all the x-rays that he gets? Like I mean, I'm not a doctor, but he gets a lot of them.
Wow. I mean, if he's had 296 total injuries, you would think he's had at least 50 to 60 x-rays in his career.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole because I don't know how much radiation is in a single x-ray or whatever, but like I'd be lying if I said I hadn't had the thought. Let's move on to the Rockets.
Yeah, we'll take a quick break and we'll move on to the Rockets. And we're back, and now we're discussing the Houston Rockets, who, like the Mavericks, they are also right up against a hard cap. They filled up their roster all the way up to that first apron, the $195.9 million amount. So They are right up against it. They're now at the point where they could sign a 15th player. The veteran minimum has prorated low enough where they could sign one today, but I don't think they will. Maybe they could start doing, maybe they want to bring in someone on a 10-day, but they're mostly healthy enough where it's fine. Even with Şengün out, I think they're going to need to maximize their flexibility, because if they're going to make a trade, they're already going to have to make a dollar for dollar for the most part. I think the main thing is just trying to get another guard. I think trading Fred VanVleet's going to be a little difficult, but I feel like they are doing well enough in the regular season where they're not in danger where they need to make that trade now. Obviously, any Fred trade is more about raising the ceiling for the playoffs. So I I think it's pretty simple. Mainly just try to get an upgrade on guard, maybe over Aaron Holiday. Can you combine some of those minimum salaries to get some guy making in the $4 to $5 million range, assuming all these guys are untouchable? That's how I'm looking at it. They have enough draft picks to make something like that happen. But I want to start this off with a different question, Sam, because they are about $6.8 million above the luxury tax line, and they can't get below it unless they trade one of their top 9 guys, or Tari Eason as well, one of their top 10 guys. I don't think that's really anything they're really interested in right now. But knowing about the repeater clock and when that could start, they're within reach of ducking the tax if they really wanted to. Do you think that's in the cards? How likely do you think that is? That even a serious consideration in your opinion?
I don't think that they will, because I think if that was a concern, they just wouldn't have gone over it. I think they knew what they were getting into when they built this team in the offseason. The big change is that Fred VanVleet was healthy when they built this team, and now he's not. And I wonder if they look and they say, we're so good now, even without Fred. Does it make sense for us to delay our repeater clock? Because it may not ultimately matter for us in a championship equity perspective. So, I mean, there are a couple of ways that you could go about this. I think you could justify, number one, just looking for a trade of Fred VanVleet that gets you back somebody who can contribute this year, but doesn't cost much or doesn't cost as much, like saves you $7 million. And maybe you include draft picks, or maybe it's just a worse player, whatever. I looked around and I couldn't find that sort of trade. I don't
I've
know if
got
you
it.
have one.
I've
Okay,
got it.
pitch.
I mean, I'm not going to pitch. I'm just going to show you. I'm not saying I condone it, but you could trade Fred VanVleet for Colin Sexton, and you're basically there.
Yeah, I've thought about that. My question is, number one, as we should point out, Fred VanVleet has an implicit no trade clause because he has a player option for next year. I see no reason why Fred VanVleet would be willing to go to Charlotte.
Well, you could change. You can always expand it, send them to a third team. Doesn't necessarily need to be Charlotte. I've also said time and time again, I don't think that's really going to be as big an issue if with the way with the way the league works, you can communicate ways like, where if Houston communicates that they're not going to keep him long term, Fred's probably going to want to get to his next situation where he'll get paid as soon as possible. And obviously the implicit no trade clause, it's to protect his bird rights. It only matters if he's going to opt out, which he probably won't. So I don't think that's going to be a super big issue. And a team like Charlotte, even if he doesn't want to be there, they can bring him in with the idea, hey, like we'll take care of you later. Maybe you just spend the first half of next season with us, be a good locker room presence, veteran leader, all that stuff. And then if you don't want to be here, we'll move you. But I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be a priority to duck the tax.
Well, I've got way more tax stuff. So calm down. We're not leaving the tax situation.
I thought I didn't know you were going to go.
To discuss.
No.
Yeah, the other thing about Colin Sexton is I don't think Ime Udoka would play him. I don't think Ime Udoka is playing Colin Sexton and Reed Shepherd. That's just too far defensively. That was the big hang up. Like I don't think they're trading Fred for somebody that they're not going to use. Maybe before the season, they would have looked at Sexton as better than Reed Shepherd. Now I don't think they would. So I think that's off the table. Now, option number 2, you signed Clint Capella basically to get Steven Adams through the regular season. He's now mostly done that, right? If you make a trade on deadline day, you're like 65% of the way through the regular season. And you could say, mission accomplished, Clint. We're just going to dump you and get below the tax. If they dumped Clint Capella, I think he's at 6.8 and their tax bill is 6.9 or something like that. They'd basically be there. They could get below by like trading Jayshawn Tate and then signing a minimum or something. So that's feasible. I just don't think you're going to screw over the player like that when he took a discount to come play for you. So I don't think a Capella trade is likely. I did
Yeah.
settle on what I think is the most sensible way to do this, which is, can you trade Dorian Finney-Smith for a cheaper guard with the idea of both addressing your guard situation and selling this to the fan base as like, hey, we got a guard, we needed one, but actually you're kind of ducking the tax. I think there's enough interest in players like Dorian Finney-Smith, just 3-and-D wings, that is a pretty attainable goal. So here's one that I came up with. Dorian Finney-Smith, Jayshawn Tate, and however many second round picks it takes. I have 2 in here. Maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4, whatever, for Ayo Dosunmu. How does that sound?
I think with Dorian Finney-Smith, if they trade him, I think they're gonna want to try to get another wing to
They
help
have
this.
no, they have too many as it is.
That's the point. I don't think they want to have less wings. I think they like this surplus that they have. If they're gonna trade Dorian Finney-Smith, I think they'd want another high-level wing who just makes cheaper. But I can't identify who that player is. Dorian Finney-Smith, when he's healthy, making 12.7, $13 million. That's a pretty good contract. So I'm with you as far as the strategy, but I think they want to have these high level of wings. And if they get a guard, I think it's gonna be pretty low. And I feel like it's gonna be the same thinking with Capella. He's now proven their decision to bring him in as important with Şengün. Now they're using him a lot now, and I think it's gonna be hard to trade him at this point. So
What if
it's
there
gonna
was a
be
buyout guy? Like there isn't yet, but I wonder if that might be something they consider. I don't know. I just think, remember, next year with 9 players on the team, they're 17 million under the tax. I think Tari Eason is going to cost more than 17 million, or at least in that range. Tari Eason's played very, very well for them. Like, you're probably paying the tax next year.
yeah.
And then after that, Amin Thompson's presumably very expensive contract kicks in, and you're probably a tax team for the foreseeable future. Delaying that repeater is important. That's going to be something that like really matters to you in 2030 and 2031. And I think those years are probably more important than this year, even if they're so far out that it's kind of a nebulous concept. I would be pretty open to trying to do this. You want to get weird?
Go ahead.
Fred VanVleet and Dorian Finney-Smith to the Toronto Raptors for Emmanuel Quickley. And then you would, between the two of you to make this work financially, you would dump Ochai Agbaji, Aaron Holiday, and Jayshawn Tate on the Nets, which is a combined $11 million or so. And the Rockets would give up like a bad first round pick to make that happen. But the Rockets would basically be saying, yeah, we're getting Quickley, who's an upgrade, who's like can do basically what VanVleet did for us, but he can play this year. We're getting off of Finney-Smith, but we're so deep at the wing that it doesn't matter anyway. And then we conduct the tax this year, and Quickley would be like a great bench guard for them moving forward. He'd be overpriced, but he'd be good to
Yeah,
have.
that's the hang up. I agree with you as far as the player type, but how much is he going to play? Where is he going to start? I'm not sure.
I bring
I
him off the
think
bench.
so that's the big hang up. If he's making $32.5 million, he needs to start. If he's coming off the bench, that's a big problem. Like with the idea that okay, maybe you're confident he'll start later, but I know even if the Rockets would bring him in with the intent that he would be a starter later, I think it's gonna be an issue. I know for sure Udoka won't start him this year. Um, and even if he and then how much has he played? Knowing how much he wants to lean into his starting 5 already. Aaron Holiday, when he does play, only plays like 12 minutes a game. Like, I don't think you can bring in Quickly if you're only going to play him like 18 tops.
You have to pay him like
So
25, I think.
If he was making less money, I think there's something there. They got to really like quickly though, to because that's a long term investment. He's got so many years left on his contract. They got to be confident that over time he'll be good enough where he could start. But even then, that contract's just a little high. Like they got Fred right at a perfect number. It's unfortunate he got injured.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Fred presumably will be able to play for them next year, which is nice, and he's an important locker room figure. Like, you would rather keep him. I'm just throwing out every possibility. As we've gone through
Apparently,
this exercise,
he's saying he might play this year.
that's okay. I looked into this. That's a 7-month recovery because you're not bringing him back in the playoffs, right? He tore his ACL in September. Regular season ends in April. You need like 4 or 5 regular season games to like get your sea legs. They're not bringing him back in the playoffs. To come back from a torn ACL in 7 months, has that ever happened? That seems impossible to me.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So that seems out of the picture. As we've gone through this, I do think it's unlikely that they would duck the tax. I think the Finney-Smith to Sunmu trade, I would make that if I was running the Rockets because I would frankly rather have Ayo Dosunmu than Dorian Finney-Smith. I think having that optionality with an extra guard means more than the extra size with Finney-Smith, especially because like Josh Okogie's been good. Like I'd be happy to play Josh Okogie in the playoffs. Amin can guard anybody. Jabari can guard anybody. Tari can guard anybody. Like you're so versatile as it is. I think Dorian Finney-Smith is mostly just injury insurance, and I don't know. I think I would rather have another guard, which I think maybe isn't a need, but I think would be of value to you. Before we move on, I do have one Rockets trade target that would be a total luxury, but nobody has brought him up, so I'm just going to throw this out there. Fred VanVleet and Dorian Finney-Smith for Michael Porter Jr., with the idea that you would also remove the swap rights that the Rockets have with the Nets next year. What is Houston's one weakness? Shooting. Get another forward. You're obsessed with forwards, but get one who's going to make threes. You'd have like Kevin Durant and Kevin Durant Jr.
So I think I brought this up to you, not in our Porter Jr. episode, but maybe a month ago when we first floated the concept of the Nets trying to make a deal with the Rockets and getting their pick back. I didn't float a framework. I was just saying, what if the Nets trade Michael Porter Jr. to the Rockets? Would the Rockets be interested in bringing him in and in exchange giving up that swap back? I kind of like it. I feel like they would, and I kind of like it in the way I think they will like it. I think that's something that they might actually seriously go for, to have a lineup of Amen, MPJ, Jabari, KD, Şengün. I think they would really be into that. The issue is the money. Obviously, like the money works. That's not the problem, but then they're a little lighter on their crazy surplus of wings. Maybe they'll have an issue with that. Well, I mean, no, they're actually even. They're going from Dorian Finney-Smith to Michael Porter Jr., but then they're
just
really
a defensive
thin on guards.
wing for an offensive wing.
So then in the long run, they're going to be really thin on guard, and they're not really going to have many avenues at all to get one, assuming they re-sign Tari Eason. Because if they re-sign Tari Eason, with or without that hypothetical trade, I don't think they're going to have the full mid-level. Maybe they'll have...
Next year?
It depends. Yeah, I don't think they will. Yeah, they wouldn't have the full amount.
No, I don't think they would really come close either. Like,
yeah,
I think Tari's going to be expensive. And like, again, if you duck the tax this year, doing so next year is less of a concern. So that's something to keep in the back of your mind if you do want to dip into your mid-level next year.
Oh, no. Well, I'm just saying, regardless, they're probably not going to have their mid-level next year.
Right.
If whether they do that trade or keep the roster as is, their payroll is going to be so high after an Atari extension, they'll have no mid-level.
Right. But I'm saying you could maybe dip into it. Like, you don't use the whole thing, but you use a chunk of it. Like, that's something to keep in the back of your mind.
So now they're depending a lot on Reed becoming more of a playmaker, and they're going to have to get lucky with minimum signings. They're going to have to depend on whichever guards they bring, because right now they already need guards. Like, I like the trade. I like where you're going with it, and I really would like to know what Houston feels about that, because I think deep down they really are into it. Realistically, though, I think they're hoping for, as far as this season, their best shot at getting guards in the buyout market.
CJ
They
McCollum
are,
getting traded really hurt because
yeah,
we've been sitting there talking about that. CJ McCollum would have been perfect.
that's exactly where I was going with it. And the Rockets can sign any player bought out who had a salary above the mid level, which CJ does. I don't think he gets bought out from the Hawks.
No.
And Grant Afseth was reporting that the Hawks might even look to extend him on like a 1 year, $20 million deal. Regardless of that, like this Hawks season, even if it really spirals, I think it's unlikely. So unfortunately, I think that option's offered the Rocks. That would have been perfect. Like just for like 15 minutes a game, some CJ, you could probably get more playing time than that. But if he even just to get that as your primary backup guard with Reed, that would have really balanced things out for their playoff run. Anything else before we move on?
No, I think we're good on Houston.
All right, we'll take a quick break and then we will move on to the other team that had really big news, the Memphis Grizzlies. And we're back this time about the Memphis Grizzlies. They also had some major news today. According to Shams Charania, the Grizzlies are now listening to offers on Ja Morant. And this is kind of surprising to me. I did not expect this to get this far into the season. I thought that would be more of an off-season or maybe next season type of thing. However, there is another element to this. Some follow-up reporting from ESPN by Michael C. Wright. So ESPN had this post after where they talked about the Ja situation and like some potential trades, but league sources told ESPN's Michael C. Wright that Morant still hasn't gotten over the suspension because he felt alienated by teammates who were told to leave the star guard alone so he could work through the issues that led to the suspension. In the aftermath, Morant told players around the league that some of his former coaches that he isn't playing for Memphis anymore, according to sources. So I just bring this up because it feels to me that I feel like a lot of this is probably coming from Ja's camp. Would you think so?
Yeah, that seems. I mean, I think both
Yeah.
sides now are ready for a split. I think this is kind of, they were trying to hold it together in November when we were saying, like, for the love of God, make the trade, like tank, really lean into this, get out of this, start over. You have good young talent in the building, you have picks. I think now, like, they're sort of coming to the realization a couple months late, but ultimately getting there before the deadline. And I'll say this, it seems like there's more of a market for Ja Morant than there was for Trae Young. Would you agree with that?
We'll get into that, but first I just kind of want to like try to suss out some of this reporting because it's rare for stuff like this to leak from Memphis. They don't leak stuff like this ever at all. And so to me it feels like his camp's probably putting it out there that he clearly wants out. But maybe also there's another team that maybe got deep enough in negotiations with the Grizzlies that they're starting to leak out things potentially to try to get a deal through the finish line. It just like the Grizzlies would have never put this out. Like when they made the Desmond Bane trade, for example, that came out of nowhere. And there's countless other transactions you could point to that never leaked ahead of time. In fact, the one time there was a deal with the Grizzlies that was getting leaked, there was the one where they were going to get Dorian Finney-Smith last year. That was leaked, and then it just didn't even happen. It fell through.
You're forgetting a very notable one. Remember the incident of the wrong Brooks?
Well, that one's a different front office. So
I'm just saying.
I can't compare it, but that is a good one. So 2 months ago, we went through the exercise of going through Ja Morant's entire market. This was after that game where after the game in his the post game press conference, not press conference, like locker room interview, he said some things that got him suspended for conduct detrimental. We discussed the Grizzlies' outlook, Ja's future, also Jaren's as well. And we looked through every single team that you ranked. Did you rank the teams for Ja at that time?
I think I did. That sounds like something I would do.
Yeah, usually Sam will rank all 29 teams' likelihood of acquiring a certain star when they're available. But we concluded basically two things. One, that no trade would happen. And two, that if a trade did happen, we felt that Miami wasn't like necessarily the likeliest team to get him, but we felt that if there was a team that made the most sense to take a chance on him, given everything, both the off court stuff, but also his decline and the potential that he might not really get it back, we felt that if there's a team who could maybe get it back, most likely Miami. Maybe they could turn things around with him. So after this report and 2 months later, do any of these things change in your mind?
Okay, we got to stop first with Miami. I don't think the Heat are going to do anything until Giannis is settled. And I know Giannis came out with a quote and said, like, oh, I will never ask to be traded. That is semantics. He did not say he was signing a contract extension until he signs a contract extension. I'm just going to say it. I don't believe him. If you read the actual interview and not just the social media aggregation, there is all sorts of qualifying going on in that interview where he's saying, today I'm happy with the Bucks. Today I love my wife. Tomorrow my wife might not love me and I might not be happy with the Bucks or whatever. Like, he said that several times. He's been playing these semantic games all season where he's like, I can't be held responsible for the conversations my agent is having. The Knicks had trade conversations with the Bucks. Those really happened at the direction of Giannis's camp. Like, the Heat are not going to do anything until Giannis is settled. Do you agree with that?
I was going to touch on that. I don't necessarily think so, because it's if they can get Ja primarily for salary matching. So let's say it's Rozier and some combination of like Fontecchio and then one guy, like let's just say it's Jaquez, because they're gonna have to give up a little something. Let's say that's what it takes to get the deal done. You still have enough in terms of value and salary matching to get Giannis. So the big
You
question
don't
would
want
then be,
Ja with Giannis.
yeah. So that's the big question: is that a combination you even want?
Not even a little.
And I would agree. I'd be inclined to agree that ideally that's not a pair of players I'd want to put together. But maybe the Heat don't quite see it that way. Maybe
That that is
they
LeBron and Russell Westbrook 2.0. It's the same thing. And by the way, what offense are the Heat running? The Noah LaRoche offense that Ja hated so much last year that Taylor Jenkins and Noah LaRoche got fired over it. This, like, I
yeah.
know we have this thing where we have to link every star to the Heat. And yes, do I think the Heat are the organization that could give him the best chance at recapturing his old form? Sure. This one doesn't really make sense to me.
Well, let's talk about then. Let's finish with the Heat then, because if fit is going to be an issue, then how do you feel about the idea that they could potentially get him maybe mainly for Rozier, where they could have a really deep backcourt of Ja, Hero. I guess that pushes Davion to the bench. You got
Which I
Norm
don't
Powell
like.
there. Like, what do you think about that, at least in the short term, before they potentially do other moves to balance that out?
What does Norm Powell have to do for a team to believe in him as like a longer term piece? Like, he's having an all-star season. Like, why are you taking the ball out of Norm Powell's hands? Like, between Norm Powell, Tyler Hero, and John Morant, I typically don't do the there's only one ball thing, but Ja has to have the ball. He's such a bad shooter that you can't take the ball out of his hands. Like, you can't justify the minutes otherwise, because he's also so bad on defense. I don't want Norm Powell and Tyler Hero just being like spot up shooters. Like,
Yeah.
I understand the impulse to get them a star. This makes no sense.
I still would think they're a little high on the list of teams that would go after him. I think if the price is just so low, I think they'll seriously consider doing it and trying to figure out the rest later. I think I want to say it was Jake Fisher who reported maybe last month that the Heat were looking at buying low, at potentially at John Morant. Sorry if I'm wrong on that, but I remember someone was reporting about that possibility. So I wouldn't rule it out. I understand the fit issue. I'm with you there, but I could see them bringing him in anyways and trying to figure it out later. So with Memphis, I guess yes, the likelihood that of a trade has increased with this report, and also the trade with Trae Young. He went for virtually nothing. He was basically salary dumped, and Atlanta basically came to the conclusion that they could hold on to him for another year, and hopefully he rehabs his value a little bit more. And they concluded that's probably not going to happen. Let's just get off him now, get the flexibility instead of having his contract. We could do a lot more in the short term with that. Feels like maybe Memphis is, if not already came to that conclusion, they're getting kind of close to it. Because you and I both agreed that as soon as they did that Bane trade, they were soft. They were basically, we call it soft launching a rebuild. They're in a rebuild right now. And it's just a matter of when Ja and Jaren get traded, which is when will they get the right offer for them. For Jaren, I think there's still hope they can get a very big haul for him. With Ja,
I have one. We'll get to that.
For Ja, I feel like Memphis is getting pretty close to the conclusion that if they hold on to him, his value's not going to get better, both with his contract, with his decline, the saturation of guards in the league, the extra influx of guards that will be coming in the draft, and just the trend against small guards right now. So I understand if they just want to trade him now, like the Hawks just did, and most likely get nothing for him. So I want to just kind of rank the top teams now.
Let's just make fake trades. We'll just go through the teams.
Okay, you do the fake trades, and then I want to do my power ranking of teams.
Rank them after we've done all the fake trades. I think there's a short list, but
we'll probably overlap anyways.
Yeah. Minnesota, I would not do this if I was Minnesota, but that's a team that was in the running from the reporting. I have two different constructions here. I like them both.
They're my number 5 team, by the way.
Oh, so perfect timing. Ja Morant to Minnesota, Naz Reid and Bones Highland to Indiana, Mike Conley, Benedict Mathurin, Rob Dillingham, and Isaiah Jackson to the Grizzlies. So Memphis gets the Mike Conley reunion, which is fun. And they get two interesting young players in Mathurin and Dillingham. So like that.
So that's the deal for anyone wondering how the Wolves would be able to get Ja Morant. That is the trade. There's really no other structure, mainly because one, Minnesota has to send out more than they're getting back for Morant's $39.4 million salary. They're not going to trade Rudy Gobert. They're not going to trade Julius Randle, which makes Naz Reid the likely candidate out of all their bigs to get traded. So between him, Conley, Dillingham, and one minimum salary, which you have Bones being it, that works. And then they're able to backfill the roster under the... they're not hard capped to the second apron right now, but that trade would hard cap them to... They have to stay under the second apron because since they're aggregating, that would hard cap them. So they would be able to stay on, but they would be able to stay under it after.
Yeah.
That would be, from a value proposition, a really nice sell for the Wolves, where they could spin it as Naz Reid was an undrafted player in the 2019 draft, and we were able to flip him for the guy who was the number 2 pick in the 2019 draft, and at one point was probably number 1. Okay, I get that, but when push comes to shove, I don't think I'd do it if I'm the Wolves.
No,
that's just such a big risk still. You can say that, okay, you didn't really give up anything of consequence, especially depending how you feel about Naz Reid's contract and what you think Dillingham's going to be. Maybe neither of those guys get any better, in which case he didn't really give up much. But if Ja doesn't get back to... I'm just going to say it. He needs to get back to all-star form for this to make sense for the Wolves. If he doesn't get back to that, then you're even out of more moves to make, in which case you are potentially expediting the window on Anthony Edwards, because this Minnesota team already is so leveraged from more moves to make to upgrade around him. They can't, their margin for error is so low. This trade diminishes that even further. So you trade for Ja Morant, you better be sure he's going to get back to who he was, or you could really risk losing Edwards in a couple of years.
I think there's a 10% chance this trade would get Minnesota to the finals and a 90% chance it would end with Anthony Edwards playing for the Houston Rockets in 2 or 3 years. Like,
Yes.
that's what I think would happen.
Yes, that's
Like,
so
really
perfectly
think
well
about
said.
this. If Ja Morant, if they make this trade, Julius Randle would be the second best 3-point shooter in Minnesota's starting lineup because you'd have Rudy Gobert, Jaden McDaniels, and Ja Morant. Would you like bring Morant off the bench and start DiVincenzo to make that work? I don't think Ja would handle that well. Like, there is a chance there would be so much talent. It would be so electric. You would fill the point guard hole. You'd get more playmaking. Like, you'd be so talented. I guess there is a chance that in this new NBA that emphasizes having multiple ball handlers and athleticism, that maybe it could work. And I think defensively it could because McDaniels is so good and Rudy Gobert is so good. He might win Defensive Player of the Year. Like that, they've been so good that maybe you could justify it. But I think the likelihood is that it would end with Anthony Edwards playing for Houston or Detroit or Brooklyn or whoever in 2 years or so. Speaking of Detroit, that is my other like possible team in a Minnesota 3-teamer where Detroit would get Naz Reid and Memphis would get Conley, Dillingham, Bones, Jaden Ivey, and Paul Reed. I have mentioned Jaden Ivey a lot as somebody that I think Memphis should go for if they're trading Ja Morant. I think he is a similar type of player where you can still kind of move forward with the vision you had of the team with a real like attacking guard as you're at point. I don't think Detroit is going to want to bring back Jaden Ivey as a restricted free agent, or I think that could be an ugly summer long standoff. I don't think he really makes sense on this year's team either, where like they have LeVert, they have Dennis Jenkins. I think they're comfortable there. Ivy just doesn't have the runway he needs to kind of get back on track after the injury. And oh my God, would Naz Reid be so perfect for the Pistons, where you have these like two awesome old school defensive big men in Stewart and Duran. And then you bring in this killer shooter on top of it in Naz Reid, who could play next to either of them. And you keep Tobias Harris, your locker room shaman, on the team. And like, you don't have to really disturb what you're doing. I think that would be a killer trade for Detroit if they could do that. So again, I don't know if Minnesota is actively in this, but if Naz Reid is out in the ether, Detroit is a team I would love to see go for him. There are a lot of teams that could go for Naz Reid, frankly.
That makes a lot of sense. I know you brought up on Twitter earlier today about how the Grizzlies should go after a guy like Jaden Ivey. I'm 100% with you. And I kind of wonder if his potential availability could be motivating Memphis to get a deal done now. Because that, if you can get Jaden Ivey as part of a jaw return, given everything going on, I think that's a really good way to come out of that situation. They're not going to be able to sign him in free agency. They could sign and trade for him, but you figure there's going to be some level of competition for Ivy now that realistically he could get traded. And once he's traded, he's probably going to just sign a new contract with his next team. So if you're Memphis, might as well try to get ahead of that. Bring try to bring him in now. As far as Naz Reid, I was thinking about. So first of all, that framework you mentioned, I think that makes a lot of sense. But even if there was a 2-team deal between the Wolves and the Grizzlies, I do like the idea of them bringing in Naz Reid, where also if he is the best player they're able to come out with, I think all things considered, that's a pretty good way to get out of the Morant deal. Especially if you end up trading Jaren Jackson Jr. in the future, you can have Naz Reid play for like a year and a half, and just put up crazy numbers. And I could see them rehabbing his value to the point where that's now looking like a positive value contract, and they could get something like maybe a first round pick or two for him. So that's just another interesting thing where if Naz Reid is there and they're pretty much depleted of talent, that could be like a pseudo Michael Porter Jr. situation there.
He'd also fit next to Zach Edey, maybe not defensively, but like the shooter with the big bruiser is a fit that kind of works. But anyway, that's enough of Minnesota. Right. Next team, Phoenix, Jalen Green, Nick Richards, Nigel Hayes for Ja Morant.
They're my number three.
They're your number three.
And a bit of a wild card.
Yeah, I think it's Phoenix probably has some justifiable trepidation about jumping back onto the Moody star train after everything they went through with Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal last year. I would hate to move Colin Gillespie to the bench. There are all sorts of issues there. But the Suns have been 25th or lower in points in the paint 4 years in a row. Like, they never, ever get to the basket. Ja actually does get to the rim, and they have enough shooting that they could probably support him elsewhere offensively. Not as high on the defense, but I think like you could figure that out. At least, especially if your ambition is just not that high. Like if the goal is just to kind of be what you are now with a little bit more upside, I do think that mostly makes sense. It would be very hard for Phoenix to duck the tax if they did this. This would get them 1.1 million below the tax, but they would have, I think, 12 players on the team. And I think Matt Ishbia wants to duck the tax this year. I don't know that for sure, but that's the one kind of hiccup. Memphis would have to like Jalen Green. It's that simple. If Memphis doesn't like Jalen Green, there is no trade here.
Sorry, what's the exact framework you put together?
Jalen Green, Nick Richards, Nigel Hayes for Ja Morant.
Yeah, that's what I basically came up with. Jalen Green and Nick Richards mainly, and then maybe they dump they have to just dump one more minimum. Maybe they do that in a separate trade, but you could try to get that done with Memphis. Yeah, that gets Phoenix under the tax too. Yeah,
but they'd have to fill out the roster is the issue.
I haven't done. I'm not going to do the math unless the trade actually happens, but they're within reach where they'll be able to deduct the tax later. Yeah, I don't even know if it's about liking Jalen Green. I think it's just about how badly do you want to get off Ja Morant, because if you bring in Jalen Green, he's got the same years left with the player option on the last year. So you're just making a lot less money. I don't know if I think I like this deal the least out of all the different frameworks out of all the teams I came up with. Like, I think I'd rather do something with the Heat if you can just get the expiring of Rozier, or if you're going to take on a big contract, I like the idea of taking Naz Reid. Jalen Green, I think it's more or less just like a more available Ja Morant, where he's just making a little bit less money. He's going to play. He's not going to help them at all, and I don't think he's going to have any better trade value in the long term. I don't see them being able to flip him for more.
Yeah,
but so I do. But I just bring up the Suns because they might not be able to help themselves. They might I could see them doing this because of that price. But so far, like all the reporting seems to suggest that they just want to keep everybody, and that includes Jalen Green, who hasn't played for them, especially right now that they're rolling. So I would have to guess, it's just worth mentioning with the Suns, they might go back to their old ways, but I would say most likely they probably abstain, but just worth noting.
What are they doing with Jalen Green? Is he coming off the bench when he's back? Because Colin Gillespie should not give up his starting job.
I think so, because the whole starting lineup was so TBD ahead of the season. I was projecting that they'll probably just start. Okay, yeah, you got to start Booker Green because of the salaries. Brooks, obviously, then figure out the rest after that. Mark Williams, probably because they traded so much to get him. Now, with the way Gillespie's playing, there's no way they could just demote him. I think.
I mean, you could for Ja Morant, but you couldn't for Jalen Green.
Yeah. It's just $33.5 million to come off the bench is tough. We'll see but at the same time, maybe that's the role he's supposed to play, just be a really high-end role player off the bench, and I'm sure he could thrive in that role, and that could really help the Suns a little bit more in the regular season. We'll see, but I figure that's what it's going to be now.
There's a more interesting conversation to be had about Phoenix's long-term finances, because re-signing Mark Williams is not going to be cheap. Re-signing Colin Gillespie is not going to be cheap. Re-signing Jordan Goodwin is not going to be cheap. So that we'll have that conversation closer to the offseason, but just something to keep in the back of your mind. Next team. This is the team that I would want to trade with if I were Memphis. That is the Sacramento Kings. The obvious reason that I would want to trade with them is because they're the Sacramento Kings and because they're dumb. The second reason that I would want to trade with them is that all of their money is bad. They have no expiring contracts, which means you can leverage the fact that there are expiring contracts out there to milk real asset value out of them. So here's what I have. Ja Morant to the Kings for DeMar DeRozan, Malik Monk, Devin Carter, and a 2027 first round pick. That pick will be top 4 protected. It will remain top 4 protected in 28, and 29 it becomes unprotected. The basic logic here is you're going to the Kings and you're saying you can have your 2026 first round pick. You can try to get Peterson or Tabonsa or Cam Boozer. We won't get in your way. And you're going to have Ja Morant next year. So you're going to be great. You're making the playoffs for the second time in 2 decades. You don't have to worry about giving us a good pick. Your pick is top 4 protected too. So if everything goes wrong, you're still okay. You're just betting on Sacramento incompetence. You're just betting that because it's the Kings and because the West is so good, they're going to wind up with like the 5th pick or the 7th pick or whatever. Or they're going to pick in the top 4 again. And it's going to roll over. And like eventually maybe you get to an unprotected pick. That's the logic. That's the trade I would want to make if I were Memphis, because I want the one premium asset.
100%. If that's also something we agreed on. If you're the Grizzlies, the one thing that would make you trade Ja now is if the Kings would give you a pick that belongs to them. 100%. I don't think the Kings are doing it now. I didn't think they'd be quite this bad. I thought they'd be like, I knew they were gonna miss the play-in. They'd be dropping out of that, but I'm a little surprised they were gonna be the absolute worst team in the league. So with that, I don't see it happening. I don't see them giving up any positive value at all to do this, where chances are the Grizzlies will probably get some level of positive value. Like with the Wolves, they get some pretty good players they could flip later. In that, there's a couple in the Heat trade, a lot more cap relief. Maybe you get a nice young player on a rookie scale contract. I don't think the Kings are going to trade any pick, and I don't think they have any players that are of interest other than Keegan Murray, who they're not going to trade for Ja Morant. So maybe in the offseason, this is something that could be revisited. I understand greater powers could get involved and push for this deal to get it done if the price is low enough. I'm going with my gut tells me that won't happen though. They're not in my top 5.
I think for now the front office has done a good enough job of managing Vivek that they can avoid this, but it would be a very Vivek thing to do to force the trade through anyway. Raptors pretty quick. It's just Emmanuel Quickley and Ochai Agbaji. Basically, does Memphis want Emmanuel Quickley? And I think the answer to that is probably no, because they want to go down if they're trading Ja. They want to tank. They don't want a competent point guard who's overpaid like Quickley. I just don't think that really makes sense. We just have to mention them because, like the Heat, we have to link them to every star because they just need the talent upgrade. And I don't think Ja makes sense for Toronto either. I think it just doesn't really make sense for them with Pirtle as their center, who's attempted 7 threes in his career, and Scotty Barnes, who's just all over the map when it comes to shooting, to get a point guard that can't shoot. I just don't think that makes sense, and we just have to mention them.
So they're my number 1 team. And the trade I came up with would be sending out Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett for Ja Morant and KCP. So this deal keeps them tax neutral, and maybe they just so that's the main salaries, and then it's about they're gonna have to send back positive value because Quickley's a bad contract, Barrett's a bad contract, though Barrett's like an equalish bad contract with KCP, just a little more upside than KCP. They're gonna have to give up something. I could see it being their first round pick this year, which is probably going to be in the mid teens, early 20s. Maybe then, one of Agbaji or Dick or Walter will have to be involved. I could see the Grizzlies wanting one of these recent draft picks as well as a first round pick. I think this is an outcome where if you're the Grizzlies, it's not like Kings level of this is a team I'd want to do a trade with, but this is pretty high up there because the Raptors would have to give up like a good amount of positive value to get this done, just with the amount of bad money that they're going to be sending out, because not only are the Grizzlies giving them Ja Morant, but they're helping them get a lot of tax relief, cap relief. But now I'm with you as far as it doesn't really make sense for the Raptors. I think they've shown that they don't really care about what is like the best fit I don't think anyone felt that the Brandon Ingram acquisition was going to be the best fit. It's worked out a lot better than we expected, but I still wouldn't say that it was like the ideal acquisition. They just got the best guy they can, and they made it work to a degree. So I could really see them going after him if the price is low enough, and it'll add even more fit issues. But I think they'll try to figure it out later. Raptors, I could see them being very sneaky aggressive. Like they could get John Morant and not Anthony Davis, but like Domantas Sabonis as well. Like they could potentially swing both of those in like one big mega trade if they really wanted to get crazy.
RJ Barrett's a good player. Emmanuel Quickley's a good player. I know they're probably overpaid, but like you're giving up two really good players for kind of a mystery box and a mystery box that doesn't fit on your team. Like, I just don't think that really makes any sense for them. And I'm not sure why it makes sense for the Grizzlies either. Like, why do the Grizzlies want Quickley and Barrett? That just doesn't really strike me as productive for them in any way. So this just doesn't really hold up for me. We
It's all
really
about the
disagree on
picks,
this.
and it's all about getting some draft picks and some of those young guys if they like them.
The next one we really disagree on is Milwaukee. You think they're going to do this, and I think that's patently insane. I think that makes no sense whatsoever. The deal would presumably be something like Kuzma, Portis, and Ryan Rollins, or Kuzma, Portis, and Kevin Porter Jr., or like Kuzma, Portis, couple minimums, and like maybe a 2026 pick swap. I'm pulling my hair out at all of the fake trades that I see with the Bucks because they all get linked to the big name, bad contract scorer types. I keep saying this over and over and nobody listens to me. The Bucks do not need shot creation. They are second in the NBA in effective field goal percentage. The reason they suck is they get no rebounds and they can't stop anybody. Explain to me how Ja Morant addresses that in any way. Him and Giannis, make no sense together whatsoever. Giannis came out and said, like earlier this week, when I play point guard, we win. What position does Ja Morant play? Point guard. He can't shoot. The Bucks have known for 7-8 years now that everybody who plays with Giannis has to be able to shoot. Ja Morant can't shoot. He can't defend. This makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah. The name of the game is just do whatever it takes to potentially get Giannis to extend the summer, which we already went over those comments he made this week. I don't think they really mean much.
While we're here, hang on a second. At the end of that interview, I just want to point this out because people don't read the whole interview. They just read the aggregation. At the end of that interview, Sam Amick asked Giannis, what would it take? Like, do you think the Bucks can turn it around? And Giannis goes, yes, but under these circumstances. And he gives a detailed answer about the sort of sacrifice that it takes to win a title, about players giving up shots that they want, doing the dirty work. Ja Morant doesn't do that stuff. Like, Giannis has laid out a blueprint of what he thinks the Bucks need, and it is not Ja Morant's.
Yeah. I know, you're right. Just for clarity, I have the Raptors my number 1, the Heat as my number 2, and then the Bucks are my number 4. I just think they might be desperate enough to do it anyways. Despite everything you just said, the deal would probably be Kuzma, Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr. I think maybe one more minimum salary, but I think that's it. Those 3 make it work.
Rollins has been better than Ja this year. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like, Ryan Rollins is good. I'd want him on my team. That's not necessarily true of Ja Morant.
It's objectively true. He's been better than Ja Morant. I'm not going to put it past the Bucks. They might just do it anyways if they can pull that off. Because even then, if Giannis leaves, the other thing to look at it is maybe this is more of a long-term play. They know that Giannis is going to leave and they're going to have to trade him anyways. So that might be the justification. You could get Ja for virtually nothing, and that's your guy that is going to be the face of the franchise, hopefully, assuming he gets back to form and helps fill up seats. And that's, you can build around him.
Okay. If he does that, he's leaving as a free agent in 2 years because he's not staying in Milwaukee. If it turns out he's still Ja Morant and Giannis isn't there. If they're going to do something like this, do it for Zach LaVine, because at least then you have a chance to be like this killer shooting team. You can't do that with Ja Morant.
Anything else on the Grizzlies? I mean, there's still a lot we could talk about with
No,
them.
we got to talk about Jaren next
Yeah.
because I think there's a very clear Jaren trade. I have a couple of Jaren trades. I'm going to save one. Spoiler alert, like foreshadowing, ba ba ba. But for now, I think there is a pretty sensible Jaren trade to be made. I think because Jaren did the renegotiation and extension, people think that his salary this year is the max. It actually isn't. He's only at 35 million this year. Why is that relevant? Because the Golden State Warriors can actually match 35 million relatively easily. You could match 35 million with Jonathan Kuminga, Buddy Hield, and Al Horford. You keep Jimmy Butler, you keep Draymond Green, you keep Moses Moody, you keep Brandon Pajemski, but you trade those super valuable deep future firsts. So I have it as those three guys, Kuminga, Hield, and Horford, and 3 first round picks, Golden State's in 26, 28, and 2032. They could also trade the valuable portion of their 2030. The pick they owe the Wizards in 2030 is protected 21 through 30. Or no, it's protected top 20. So it only goes to the Wizards if it's 21 through 30. So you could also trade the Grizzlies if it lands between 1 and 20. Like, I want Warriors deep future first round picks. I think those are some of those valuable picks in the NBA. And if you're the Warriors and you can get Jaren and have a starting lineup of Steph, Moody, Butler, Draymond, and Jaren, like, that gives you a real chance to be competitive in the playoffs.
Jaren Jackson is the player that when we did our Warriors video in the offseason, you decided to have the Warriors go after him. So we made a deal. We did a whole video with a mock offseason that brought him there. I still think it makes sense. Jaren, he signed that renegotiation on July 13th, 2025. So that means he will be trade eligible in a couple days, January 13th. So it's worth noting because it's much easier to trade Jaren while he's making $35 million versus that jump up to $49 million. And Shams did say in his reporting, he mentioned about the Grizzlies would like to still build around Jaren Jackson Jr. as their main guy. Like,
you want to build around the 40th best player in the NBA?
Yeah. This is vital posturing by the Grizzlies. You must say that stuff because he's the guy that you want to cash in on. You want to get similar value as to what you got for Desmond Bane, and I think that's out there. I like the idea of Jaren in the Warriors. I don't think the Warriors are going to give up multiple firsts. Because they've been in the position where they could have done that forever. They never did it. They could have done it.
Well, hang on.
They never did it.
They wanted to do it for Lauri Markkanen. And they offered a good first round pick. They offered a good first round pick for Paul George, and the Clippers said no because the Clippers didn't want to go into the second apron. They would have offered several first round picks for Lauri Markkanen. The issue was they didn't want to give up Pajemski because they thought he was an all-star.
I don't know about that. I think with a lot of the time when it said that a player didn't want to part with, high-end role player X, I think it's more of a meme at this point. It's just, I don't know how true that necessarily is. They've always had their full allotment of draft picks. They never traded like more than 2 at once. The Jimmy Butler trade cost them 1. The Jordan Poole trade, when they traded away from him, cost them 1. They could have consolidated before their 2022 championship, try to package guys like Kuminga and Moody or those draft picks ahead of time. They never did. I don't think they want
for Kevin Durant, and he didn't want to play for them. Like, they've tried. Remember that reporting at last year's deadline? They were trying to trade for every star in the NBA. How much was that going to cost? They got Jimmy because he was the guy who was available. That he happened to be cheap is kind of a coincidence.
I'm pretty sure that was, though, like 1 first round pick on top of Kuminga. They weren't going to trade like multiple firsts, like the 2 to 3. Getting Jaren, the Warriors getting Jaren would probably cost 3 firsts. I think the longer they get into this late stage of Steph's prime, the less likely they are to do that. I think they just want to tread this midline of just being competitive enough to keep Steph happy, like to be like fair enough to him, keep it competitive enough. Like Steve Kerr's even acknowledging it in the press conference. He's saying like, we're not in a podcast. He's saying that we know this team's not supposed to be like a top tier contender, which is kind of crazy to just say that out loud, but I kind of appreciate the honesty. I don't think they're gonna do it. I don't think they're gonna trade for Jaren. I don't think they're gonna trade for Trey Murphy. I think they just want to do like a one, like coming on one first and see what's the best they can get for that. So I think we would have seen it already. We would have seen that big trade, and
Yeah, this
they
is
just
where we
haven't done it.
disagree. I think they would have been willing in the past. I think now you're probably right. I think now they probably think that they're far enough away that it doesn't make sense. I 100% think they would have done it for Lowry Markkanen. I think they would have done it for Kevin Durant. Like, they were desperate over the last year or so. They were trying to get everybody. There just wasn't a trade out there. It's that simple.
So we were.
What other Jaren trades do you want to bring up?
I'm just like, well, who are we talking about? We're still on the Grizzlies. Good thing I have this.
Yeah.
The segment on. Teams. Detroit, obviously. I don't think they'll do it though.
I just think that's lame in both directions. That's like, congratulations, you're getting 3 picks in the 20s.
I don't think Detroit is going to make a big trade. They're playing with free money right now. They could do something, but it's not gonna be. I think they just trade Ivy and get some. It's gonna be pretty underwhelming because this team's already pretty set. What are you trading Ivy for to help boost the roster without trading for an all-star? Like, maybe you're just getting a better backup for. Other Jaren teams. Who have I had on my list?
I have one that I'm saving.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saving it for another segment. I want to start building up drama.
Okay. Those are the 2 main teams for me. Warriors, Pistons. Yeah. I haven't really thought too deeply into it.
The Lakers, if it goes into the offseason and they could do the 3 firsts.
Sure. Yeah. No, actually, yeah, that's interesting. You pitched that a while ago to me.
Yeah, I think now you'd hate to give up all of your cap space and all of the picks. So what they might actually do is like something where they use all their cap space, and then in the season they try to trade for Jaren using some of the money, and they could still keep some depth. But like, yeah, if you have a big 3 of Jaren, Luka, and Austin, that's a really nice fit. That's a really nice way to start your team. You'd have a lot of work to do to fill out your franchise, like actually have some depth. But, that's the other thing. I don't trust Rob Pelinka to fill out your depth.
I know who your other Jaren team is. So
okay, let's save it. Save it.
Should we move on?
Yeah, actually, I'm not sure you do. But anyway, yeah, let's move on. Are we done with the Grizzlies? Anything else?
I think that's it. I mean, do they trade Aldama now if they're already having a fire sale? He's a very interesting guy that I wouldn't like. I just want to. All I'm gonna say is I wouldn't be shocked if they move him. But no one's thinking about that right now because Ja and Jaren are just so high on the totem pole. As I look, KCP's negative value. Clark is just negative value. Doesn't play. Ty Jerome is still injured. And then everyone else.
Could you snipe Scottie Pippen on that very valuable long-term deal at like the minimum?
You gotta give up something like actually pretty meaningful.
I would do it.
Just with the injury, I think that's gonna complicate it. Like he still hasn't played yet.
I don't care. I'd be trying to snipe him.
I'm with you. Like, I could see a team giving up a real first-round pick for him, and given how he's played, I think that could be worth it. But just with the injury, I think he's not going to get traded right now. I come back to Aldama. He's still playing pretty well. I think that contract is very tradable, very short-term, front-loaded deal that declines. Again, not in the high end of priorities. I think Ja and at least one of Ja or Jaren need to get moved first, but I just keep an eye on that. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we will discuss the
New Orleans Pelicans.
And we're back now discussing the New Orleans Pelicans, who are also somewhat in the news today. At least just a minor report. Chris Haynes tweeted earlier today, sources, New Orleans Pelicans are disappointing the market in informing teams as Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and then Derek Queen and Jeremiah Fears will remain with the organization past February 5th trade deadline. Sam, what was your gut reaction to this report?
disappointing the market on Zion, who nobody wanted anyway, reminded me a little bit of the Trae Young wants to play for the Wizards thing, where it's like, I know you have to take care of your sources, but like, come on. Like, nobody's trying to trade for Zion. Like, Herb and Trae, fine. I don't know why you have to mention Queen and Fears. Nobody thought they were
Yeah.
getting traded.
Yeah. Two of those things are not like the other.
Yeah.
And it's just, we're a month away from the trade deadline. It's kind of premature for the Pelicans to put that out there. It just seems like they're not getting the offers that they're hoping for. So we'll see if that changes. A lot of time. With the Pelicans, the teams, all the possibilities are pretty endless. You can list a lot of teams for a lot of their top guys available. I feel like first going through a couple guys and just kind of talking about if we agree on their value. You want to start with Trey Murphy?
Yeah, I think it's like three good things, whether they're between players and draft picks. What I'm going to say, though, is any trade involving Trey Murphy has to come with something real, right? It can't be a pick for like, you're not doing 3 Pistons picks because Pistons picks all have a chance to be in the 20s. There has to be like something of genuine substance going to New Orleans in a Trey Murphy trade. I have some fun ideas we're going to get into, but none of this like 3 picks from a good team nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, 3 first-round picks worth of value. I think we're in agreement there. Just that contract, $25 million average or $27 million average.
4 more years after this or 3?
It's got 3 more years, I believe, after this. 21 class, yeah. So this is an amazing deal. He would probably still get the same value if they held on to him next year or into the offseason. So
they don't have to rush. They could also just have him on their team.
Yeah, but I think if he's traded, very likely will go down as a player who gets the most for any individual player in a trade, this trade deadline.
Yes, I agree.
Especially when you consider who's likely to be traded. Yeah. Do you have any any new trade you want to discuss?
I've got a couple for you if you want.
All right.
I just said the Pistons, you're not going to do 3 first-round picks because those picks are bad. Could you do something player-centric with the Pistons? Where it's you get like Isaiah Stewart, Ron Holland, and 1 pick. Does that interest you at all? Because I think if you're the Pelicans, like the thing you have to look at down the line, you have to get a rim protector next to Derek Queen. That's like the most important archetype that you need to fill. Isaiah Stewart can do that. Obviously, Troy Weaver knows him. He drafted him in Detroit. He didn't draft Ron Holland, but he did draft Stewart. I think that's a really nice fit, and he's affordable on a nice team-friendly contract as well.
Stewart, I think you got to hold on to him.
If I'm the Pistons, I agree. Yeah.
They can go to the finals over the next 2 to 3 years while he's still on this contract. He's got a team option after next year. So there's a lot of optionality you could do with an extension. But even no matter what, his max extension is going to be also pretty favorable for the Pistons with the way he's playing. His max extension would be like the Trey Murphy contract, basically, like 23, 25, 27.
I'd eagerly give him.
I think I'd want to give him that if he sustains his level of play next year. But that's even, again, there's a lot of time on that. He still has 2 more years of team control on this contract. I think you got to hold on to him. And if you do trade Isaiah Stewart, first of all, I think there's a very good chance he even raises his trade value. So not saying that they would be able to do Stewart for Trey Murphy straight up in the future, but just something, just a little sidebar on Stewart.
I think he's so foundational to Detroit's personality as a team that they can't justify giving him up. But if I'm the Pelicans and I'm not getting Stewart, then there's no trade with the Pistons. That simple.
Yeah. No, I think I agree. If you're not getting a player as good as Stewart and you're not getting a player like Asar Thompson, who I'm sure the Pelicans would love to bring in, and obviously you're not getting Jalen Duren, then I understand if there's ultimately no deal. If I'm Detroit, and I think most of us listening agree, the offer is probably going to be Ivy and a couple first round picks, or a combination of Holland and less first round picks. If they even want to go that deep, I don't even know if the Pistons want to offer all that. So
yeah, there's no deal there then.
I'm with you. I don't think it's going to happen unless Troy Weaver just really, really loves and still believes in Jaden Ivey that much.
Yeah.
But you never
know. San Antonio has a bunch of picks with swap rights attached. So you could do something that was like Harrison Barnes, Jeremy Sohan, and then like 2026, which has the Hawks swap attached, 2028, which has the Boston swap attached, and 2031, which has the Kings swap attached. I don't think if I'm the Spurs, I'd want to do that.
So I want to ask you something about that. A friend of mine on Twitter, Evan, he does content about the Spurs. He asked me about a Trey Murphy type, like how many firsts it would take to get Trey Murphy for the Spurs. It's probably 3. They could trade up to 4. But if you're the Spurs, would you trade Devin Vassell, and if it takes 1 first round pick to upgrade to Trey Murphy?
I'd be interested. It depends on which first. I don't think it's enough. But I'd be interested depending on which first it is. Like the Kings first, we talk about this a lot, is like such a prized asset that's only going out if like I can get Trey without giving up Vassell and I can have both of them. But even then, it's like, I don't know how much better you're really getting by going from Vassell to Murphy. The hope would be that Murphy has been playing for such a dumb team for his whole career that if you got him to San Antonio, like now he has a good ecosystem, he'll get even better. I don't know. I don't think there's enough on-ball opportunity for that. It's an interesting idea. I don't know. Like, I also just think the Spurs, like, they're kind of where OKC was in 24, where they want to see what they have. Like, let's go into the playoffs with this team, see how it goes, and then make our adjustments in the summer after we've had a run.
I agree, especially because with Wembanyama, I think he's, and also just the way the Spurs are, but mainly because of Wembanyama, he's showing that he's so good that you don't need the other players to be elite, like the best in their position. Like Castle, Fox, Harper, Vassell, none of these players may ever be a top 5 or even top 10 player in their position, but and they'll each get better, but they're good enough, and that's kind of the exception to Wembanyama. You just need players that are good enough as starters, and I think Devin Vassell, a little overpaid in my opinion, but he's good enough. Like, he's still a really great shooter, high volume shooter. And if you can add Trey Murphy to that, okay, great, without giving up too much. But I think if they had to just choose between one or the other, might as well just keep us. I think he's just good enough as a shooter, and you could probably get another one for a lot less.
I think the other important thing for San Antonio is the reason you keep your assets is for chaos insurance, because weird stuff happens in the NBA, and like maybe Castle tears his ACL and isn't the same, or like maybe Castle and Harper have some personality beef over who the best guard on the team is. Like, you keep your assets dry because the NBA is weird and chaotic things happen, and you want to be flexible enough to deal with them as they do. I just think they're good enough already that there's no real need to rush.
Yeah.
But here's the Trey Murphy trade that I've gotten myself very interested in today. Trey Murphy and Jordan Poole for Jaren Jackson and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope.
Oh,
here's the rim protector for Derek Queen. Yeah, I told you weren't. Get the rim protector that Derek Queen needs. Get the shooting big man that would probably help Derek Queen a fair bit, that they looked for Zion forever and never found. I think your rebounding might be a little bit suspect, but I think that's an interesting concept.
It's interesting. I have to
and then if you're Memphis, you'd have Edey as your center, but then you'd have Coward and Murphy as your wings. Like, okay, we really have something. We'd have to go out and find a point guard, but as we talk about every episode, there's much more point guard supply than point guard demand. You go get, like, make your 2 draft picks this year and then go identify a point guard on another team that you want. And now you're kind of off to the races.
It just reminds me that the Grizzlies just should have drafted Trey Murphy.
Yes, but that ship has sailed.
Oh, man. Like, they traded up when they had the player right in their hands. Took out a lot of bad money in the process too. Like you can't hit on every single decision, but that's one that the Grizzlies would be in a far different place if they had Trey Murphy already.
So I
I
think
don't know.
we probably agree the Grizzlies would say yes to this. Would the Pelicans do it? I think the Pelicans might need one pick. Because Jaren is injury prone. He's older. He's more expensive. Like, I think you need a little bit more.
I think if we're just let's forget about the salary stuff for a sec. Trey Murphy for Jaren Jackson Jr. If that happens straight up, I think that's mostly fair. Like, let's say that's just what ends up being the trade. Right now, knowing everything we know, I don't think we necessarily need to knock one team or another for accepting it. I think for Memphis, if that's who you can get for Jaren, I think I'd probably do it. Knowing that you're entering this rebuild and Jaren's contract's about to spike, maybe down the line you're not going to be able to get multiple first round picks worth of value. I think they should, but you're getting a younger, not too much younger, but a younger player who's on an even better contract, who you could potentially still have that value later. Also, though, he's a guy that they don't really have anyone like that. So he could really fit nicely if they're able to get a couple more draft picks to round out the team and quickly get back into it. So I like it a little more for Memphis in that regard. For New Orleans, I guess it just depends how much you like Jaren and trust him as he gets into this new contract, and also the infrastructure, because you're not going to replace Trey. There's no one on the roster who's going to give that level of production that Trey has. There's no one close to replicable, and your chances are you're not going to be able to bring in another player that can replicate what he does. So I think the Pelicans probably are the ones that would say no, but from a value perspective, I think it makes sense still.
Yeah. So
they just got to find a way to somehow replace Trey Murphy, and that's easier said than done.
The Pelicans would have to get a pick, but I think the idea makes sense. I think Jaren Jackson is the kind of big man you'd want next to Derek Queen. And in this scenario, Zion is just gone, which we think is going to be the case anyway, which is a nice segue to what's up with Zion. Like, we both think that they should waive him, right? Do we agree about that?
Okay, so I've been, so for those listening to Third Apron the past, I don't know, few months, I've been talking about Zion, how he has a non-guaranteed contract for next year. I was a little off on that, so apologies, but essentially he's got all these triggers to get more and more of the contract guaranteed. So last season, number one, he gets 20% of his contract guaranteed for making these weigh-ins, and that's all he got guaranteed for this season, the 25-26 season, roughly like $8 million. So he got he met those weight check-ins, and this year he's clearly in much better shape. So I'm gonna assume he's gonna hit that 20%. Now he missed way too many games. I think he only played like 30 something games last year. So he did not get any of his other games played guarantees. So really quickly, he would get an additional 40% of his contract guaranteed if he plays a total of 41 games this season, then an additional 20% if he plays 51 games, and then another 20% if he gets 61. So that's how he can get all of his contract guaranteed. Right now, he has played about 23 or 24 games. He's on pace to play 41 games. So he's probably going to get 60% of his contract guaranteed, which would make waiving him not really viable for the Pelicans or any team.
Let's stop right here.
All right.
What if you waived him before he played his 41st game?
Okay, so this is something that we discuss in private, because the Pelicans can't bench him. They can't just not play him to avoid him getting guarantees. it would be obvious why they're doing it. There would be a big grievance file. It would get messy. The Pelicans can't just get away with that. But
I
let's
want to point
say,
out the NFL teams do this. So
yeah,
I'm
but
just
it's
saying.
different when Zion. I don't know how the NFL really does it, but in the NBA, like a starting level player, putting the production of Zion for him to get benched specifically so he doesn't get the money when he's healthy. That's good. That's not gonna be so. I don't. As far as I know, the Pelicans can't just do that. Now, um, let's say the Pelicans don't want Zion's contract next year. They could get around this by then just waiving him after the trade deadline because he won't have played 41 games yet. So if they want to just waive him and only be on the hook for 20% of his salary, whatever $8 million amount that is, then let's say they don't trade him ahead of the trade line because that is the surefire way you can get off his contract by trading him. Then just waive him ahead of the trade deadline. He won't have a chance to make the 41 games. Like that's, as far as I know, that's fine. Like you get players waived for so the teams can avoid having to pay them a bonus. I remember 2 years ago, Spencer Dinwiddie got traded from the Nets to the Raptors. He was about to hit a bonus for games played or something, and the Raptors immediately cut him so they wouldn't have to pay him the bonus. So there's stuff like that I think the Pelicans could do to avoid paying him. I'm curious to know what the Pelicans really want to do with Zion at this point. I would figure they probably deep down want to move him. It's because it's great. He's playing like this. He's in pretty good shape. Okay, for how long? It's just a matter of time. Unfortunately, that's just how it is before he gets hurt again. Yeah, I deep down, if I had to guess, I'm guessing they'd love to still move him, regardless of everything going on. He's not clearly a fit with Dairy Queen, or else he'd be starting with him.
I think they have put him. Have they put him back in the starting lineup or not? I haven't watched the Pelicans in a little bit.
I think because they have a lot of injuries right now. Like they've had games where
he's back in the starting lineup now.
But Herb Jones had been out. Sadiq Bey's been out. It's been a combination of guys being out. Where who else are you going to start? That's what's going on.
And, I'd have to check on the specifics. But he came off the bench for 7 games and he's now started the next 6.
But it's because of injuries. It's not because like they want to start him again. They just now maybe when they get fully healthy. I'm just going to check their most recent game log, where they didn't have Herb Jones, they didn't have Trey Murphy. Maybe they'll end up starting him again. No Bey. We'll see. But just really quickly summarize what I'm trying to say. Zion's not a max player, and that's a problem for the Pelicans to pay him that amount. Or any team.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we both think long-term he's a bench player and he should be probably on short-term deals and probably on very competitive teams that can afford to sit him in back-to-backs and limit his minutes. The idea of having him and Queen together defensively is just not viable for the Pelicans. And if he's not going to be making the salary that he's making now, I don't know why he would want to be on the Pelicans, because I don't know why anybody would want to be on the Pelicans. So are there trades out there? I mean, the obvious team that's gotten thrown around a lot are the Chicago Bulls, who have been linked to every big name power forward because yet again, they think that they can get their own Pascal Siakam and make the finals like the Pacers did. So could you do something there with a bunch of their expiring contracts and like maybe one token first round pick, like that lottery protected Portland pick?
I wouldn't do that if I'm the Bulls.
I wouldn't either, but I'm just trying to figure out what the market is.
I don't think it makes sense. You can't really play him with Buzelis, I think. I'm wondering if this strategy that I pitch, where the Pelicans waive Zion to avoid his guarantees next year, if maybe there's a team interested in doing that for Zion now. Like get him ahead of the trade deadline so they can just get the savings. That then I think it makes more sense for the Bulls if they want to get off like Patrick Williams, for example. That's the main thing.
Why would the Pelicans take Patrick Williams? And they'd have to get something really good to.
So they get they'd get a pick back. Because if they're gonna keep Zion, it's going to be at that max. So if you can get a smaller salaried player like Patrick, again, I probably wouldn't do that if I'm the Bulls, but just conceptually, I'm trying to explain like what I think another team could be looking at Zion is a potential salary dump if they waive him early enough.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I'm just struggling to find the team. But yeah,
I don't
I think
think
we
like
both.
the only team and that are I picked the team. Do you remember which team I said is the one team that kind of makes sense for Zion at
You
his
said
maximum money?
Portland, right?
No. That's another example of a team that would want him for the savings. I picked one team as the one team that could actually make kind of sense for him for the player
Oh, did
he
you say
is.
Milwaukee?
Yes, assuming they trade Giannis.
And that right now, that's not going to happen before the deadline. So we can kind of move past that. So we both agree that Zion's value primarily comes in the non-guaranteed contract and not him as the player, because we just can't trust him to stay healthy. And it's a shame because he has played very well since he came back. Also, probably playing some of the best defense that he's ever played. He's not a rim protector, which is, again, the reason you can't play him with Queen, among other things. But he has played pretty well defensively. He's put up numbers. He's gotten to the basket. Like, he's played well. It's just you can't trust his body.
Herb Jones, anything you want to touch on there?
So probably two good assets. That seem about right to you, like a good young player and a good pick, something like that.
I think we differ a little bit on Herb's value. I'm a little lower on him than you are, mainly because of the offense. I think he's worth if it's 2 first round picks worth the value, definitely one good one, and then a so and so one.
Yeah.
So maybe we kind of align. I don't think he's gonna get the type of value though that is gonna really motivate the Pelicans to move him now, unless there is a player out there that they like, because they might just do like a player for player swap. I could see them doing that. I did pitch that Jared Allen for Herb Jones type trade. Maybe the Cavs have to give up a pick or something to incentivize him. Um, so, but Herb Jones is just so easy to plug in on any team, especially anyone who still has their full mid level. They could just absorb him even.
I do have a team that I like, which is Philly, because they need, like, Paul George has been very good defensively this year, to be clear, but Paul George is a help defender, and they need somebody who can just like stick on the best player on the other team. And Paul George is also old, and they might have to move that contract at some point. So the deal that I came up with was Oubre, Andre Drummond, the 2029 pick, which is the better of their own and the Clippers, but the Clippers is top 3 protected. You're not giving up the unprotected Clippers pick, but you're giving up the protected swap, basically. And then one other first round pick anywhere else down the line.
I don't see the Sixers giving up close to that. Like they stole Quentin Grimes for nothing. I'm sure they've made an offer for Herb Jones, and it's like laughably offensive.
Could we do something with Jared McCain maybe instead of the second pick?
Maybe, yeah. I also keep in mind it would be a little trading for Herb Jones would be a little tricky, or just trading for any role player for the Sixers be tricky because they're gonna get under the tax. Like that's a given. No matter what, they're gonna
We disagree
do that.
with that. I don't think they are a lock to get under the tax.
They do it every year. Every year. Like the only exception in recent years was when they traded for Harden. But then every single year it was just a race to get under the tax, and they do it every year, like they without fail.
I mean, they're far enough above it that I think it would be really tough. And like, if you have to give up Kelly Oubre to get below the tax, Kelly Oubre is good for them. He's an important part of that team. If you're doing it with Drummond and minimum shenanigans, okay, maybe. I haven't done the math on that. I don't know if that's viable, but I'm not giving up Kelly Oubre just to duck the tax. That's a coward's move. They're like pretty good. It's a weak East. Like, just keep your team together.
Yeah, I mean, I like Herb Jones for the Cavs. Obviously Herb Jones makes sense for the Lakers, but he's not going to turn their fortunes around just by
they're not
that
giving
trade
up picks
alone.
at this deadline. No.
Yeah. Would it be crazy if OKC was able to get Herb Jones?
I had the thought. Here's what I thought they would do.
So
OKC,
it'd be so greedy.
I have another super greedy trade coming up after this, but I thought about them trading Dort in like one of those sneaky middle of the night trades where they get way more for him than you think they should. Like I pitched Milwaukee being desperate enough to give up the 2031 first for him, but then they turn around and trade way less for Herb Jones. They trade 2 first round picks, but it's not a good one. So they kind of like just turn Dort into Herb, who they get a little bit bigger. I think they're pretty similar players, but you save a little bit of money because he's making less. Although I don't know what the extension amount is off the top of my head. But you maybe
What
like
if
reorganize your picks a little bit.
what if they can get him for Topich and Sorber?
And I guess you have to match salary with like Wiggins.
Or
That it'd
yeah,
be
one
tough
of
because they'd have to duck the tax. That's too hard. You want to hear
and then
my
they
greedy
give him
trade?
and then they also give him a first round pick. The Thunder currently have 4. Well, I guess realistically 3 because the Jazz will keep theirs, but they're not going to want those late ones. So that's another added benefit the Pelicans get
Wait,
back into the
so
draft.
they have the Clippers. They have Philly. Who
You
else do they have?
and
They don't have Utah
Houston's
because
most
that's not
likely.
going anywhere.
I
Oh, they
have
have
it as
Houston's. Got
Houston.
it.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Washington has theirs. What about
They
Jose Alvarado to the Rockets? Just for 2 minimums and second round picks. Just get
yeah.
another guy to the Rockets who's like super annoying to play against.
Yeah, that's go. So yeah, we were talking about the Rockets earlier. I was saying like what they should try to do is just try to package 2 minimum guys to get a guard who would upgrade them, and that's I think they can even just 2 minimums and then 3-4 seconds. That
Yep.
works. If you,
I think that would make a lot of sense for them. And imagine you just have a lineup out there of Alvarado, Amen, Eason, Jabari, like just all these guys that other teams hate playing against. I think that would be really fun.
yeah, I think Jose still gets moved. He's worth 3 second round picks. Last thing, Sadiq Bey. I don't think he'll get
Troy
traded.
Weaver will never trade him. Troy Weaver is too obsessed.
Yeah. So I'll just say this: he's probably not gonna. He's not worth the first round pick. If he is, he's worth like a very late first round pick. I think most teams would probably offer a bunch of seconds. Coincidentally, the Hawks traded 5 seconds to get him. I think that's how the trade went. I think with the way Bay's playing, it's worth keeping him if you're the Pelicans and see if you can get him on a nice extension. He will be extension eligible in the offseason. He can get the veteran extension max, which is projected at 4. The maximum is projected at 4 for like 93. So roughly 22-ish million a year. I think he's probably like a mid-level-ish guy, full MLE, right? Would you agree?
I guess I'm not as big a fan of his as Troy Weaver is, but yeah, it seems like about what he'll get. I think
like
Weaver
on
could win that.
On the higher end, if you can get him on a contract like that, I think there's a lot of value in that, maybe even less, given his injury concerns. So that's what I think. Like I still wouldn't have done the Jordan Poole trade. I think that killed a lot of optionality for them with getting that Jordan Poole contract on their books. It's got another year instead of CJ's, but at least they got Bay, and I think that's a nice little silver lining, especially if they can get him into a nice deal they could flip later.
Yeah, they made that trade to get Sadiq Bey because Troy Weaver, it's one of his guys. Like that simple.
I could see them just moving Hawkins just to move him. He just doesn't factor in anymore. I don't really want to get too deep into this guy. It's just speculative, but I just wonder how they feel about Yves Missi. I just feel like I wouldn't shock me if some team is able to steal him at the trade deadline.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think he has the tools to be a good developmental center.
All right. Anything else? Should we move on to the Spurs?
Move on to the Spurs, but take a break.
All right, we'll take a quick break.
Last team, San Antonio Spurs. They're $5.6 million below luxury tax. Next year, when their current free agents expire, they have $42 million in room. Something to keep in mind if they do want to do something bigger. They are currently slated to pick number 14 in the upcoming NBA draft via the Atlanta Hawks. Thank you, DeJounte Murray. Kind of fun little fact. They're 6th in offense and 3rd in defense, which is the inverse of the Rockets, who are 3rd in offense and 6th in defense. So kind of fun little in-state rivalry thing. I think there are 2 things that you could justify trying to look for, which are number 1, an extra big man, because Wemby has missed a fair number of games, and he just generally has some injury risks. And I think you could use a little bit more 3-point shooting. They are 17th in 3-point volume, 20th in 3-point percentage. So should we bother going through the big name forwards? Like we did Trey Murphy for them already. Do you think there's anything with Lauri Markkanen? I think it's not viable financially, and I don't think the Jazz want to trade him either way.
Yeah, and I don't think the Spurs likely offer that would be Barnes, Johnson, and 4 firsts and Sohan. I don't think that's going to fly. They're not going to trade any of their guards. I don't think they'd even want to trade Vassell in that package. And you and I both concluded, I think we think Lauri probably stays at this point.
Yes.
Trey Murphy, we just went over that. I think they're looking at just more very smaller upgrades to help with the roster. I would say, though, to your big man point, I would be interested in another big man that could be additive to playing with Wemby, because they've gotten a lot of bigs, not a lot of viable ones, like Olynyk's not really in the rotation, Sohan's not really in the rotation. Kornet can play some with Wemby, but if they can get another guy who can play a lot with Wemby and potentially even start with him, I would definitely be interested in that.
I think I'm probably not thinking that ambitiously, at least at this point. I do have a fun idea that we'll get to in a bit. I do just want to, the way I'm thinking of the big for them is they need their Clint Capella. They need their guy who can soak up regular season minutes. And like when Wemby can't play in a back-to-back or Kornet's out, like somebody who can scale up and play meaningful minutes, but doesn't have to every night. So the idea I came up with for that was Goga Batadze. Hey, Orlando, we'll get you out of the tax. We'll just take on the contract and we'll send 2 minimums to the Jazz so we can stay above the tax or stay out of the tax as well. We'll give them a couple second-round picks. We'll trade, who are their minimums right now? Who do I have here? Biyombo and Lindy Waters, and we'll give the Jazz 2 second-round picks. And we'll just take Goga Batadze and get you out of the tax when you have Mo Wagner coming back, who's going to take Goga's minutes anyway. So that's one that I like. He's under contract for a reasonable price next year.
That's fair. It's fair value for Goga if they want to trade him. I think Orlando's probably not going to do that to be their tax ducking move. I think that'll be Tyus Jones, most likely. But if they ever wanted to trade Goga, I think that's reasonable.
I have a more fun idea. It's a bit longer term. You've talked about Atlanta trying to get Kristaps Porzingis on like a cheaper long-term deal. I think the problem for Atlanta is that they don't have a starting center, so it'd be very hard for them to make any sort of long-term commitment to somebody whose availability is in question. That obviously isn't as much of an issue for the Spurs. I wonder if the Spurs could chase Porzingis and give him that longer term deal and like mid-range money-ish, like 15-ish a year, with the idea that like you're never going to play him in back-to-backs. You're always going to limit his minutes because you have Kornet and you have Wemby. And now suddenly you just have this impossibly enormous and skilled front court where like Porzingis and Wembanyama can actually play together a little bit. They can also play separately, and you're so deep in that front court. So the idea I came up with was just matching money. Olynyk, Sohan, Biyombo, McLaughlin, plus 1 first-round pick. I used the Boston swap 2028, but if you want to haggle over which first-round pick, I'd be open to that.
So first, this is the type of big that I would pursue, because at the highest end, it's Lauri Markkanen, I think, or Giannis, obviously. Like if you can pair Wembanyama with either of those guys, that's a dream. But to a much lower tier, Porzingis does, I think, make a lot of sense with Wembanyama. I don't know if I'd start them together necessarily, but I would definitely close with them together a lot whenever they're both available, which would be
well, it depends on matchup too,
guess.
right? Like sometimes you want the more athletic, like Harrison Barnes type archetype to be your 4, and sometimes you want Porzingis, and you can mix and match based on matchup. The idea here is like you'd never play Porzingis 30 minutes. You'd never have to.
Yeah.
You could play him 15 minutes and get as much out of him as possible. And you could play him in short shifts as well, because they've done that with Wemby and they know how to do it. So if you can only play him 3-4 minutes at a time, that's fine.
Now, in a vacuum, I don't think Porzingis is worth a first-round pick, given everything going on with his unavailability. When he plays, though, the player he is, it's definitely worth the first-round pick. So if you're the Spurs, you're going to have to give up something of that significance, because if you're the Hawks, you don't need to trade Porzingis right now. You don't have any tax issues. he could still help you. And there is still that added value potential of him extending on a really nice contract. We talked about this on the Trae Young stream. Like, I really like, I'm really interested in the idea of what the Hawks can get him at on a long-term deal to keep him. So same thing with the Spurs. So if the Spurs want to bring him in, they're gonna have to give up probably a first round pick to motivate the Hawks to do that. Worth noting, the Spurs still have another pick from the Hawks. They have to swap with the Hawks next year.
No, they have the swap this year, and next year they have the outright pick.
Oh,
The
okay.
reason I didn't include that for a number of reasons. I don't think the Spurs would want to give up the swap rights this year because that's a lottery pick right now. So I don't think that's worth it. And then next year, I think the Hawks plan to be good. So getting their own pick back doesn't really mean much. You'd probably want to rather get an external pick. But the idea for Atlanta too is like, if you're planning to go get a center somewhere else, whether it's Anthony Davis or to explore something in the offseason, if Porzingis isn't in your plans and you can get a first round pick worth of value for him now, I think that's worthwhile.
So I wouldn't trade a future pick of any kind for the Spurs, mainly because they have swaps on all those extra picks. So much variability. They're all way more valuable right now than I think what Porzingis can bring to you just for this year, even with the bonus of a potential
Boston is a different
extension.
Animal. I don't think
even then you never know.
Valuable.
Yeah,
I guess, but wait a second. Hang on. We do know.
You never know. You never know.
No, we do know. You want to know how we know? They're playing this season without Jason Tatum, and that pick is in the 20s. What else do you want? Their pick is never going to be good.
Just seems as long as they have Derek White, that pick will never be good.
Or Jaylen Brown or Joe Mazzulla. Boston's picks are never going to be good. If they can do this without Jason Tatum, their picks are never going to be good.
So, I think if I'm the Spurs, I'd probably be comfortable maybe redoing the swapping with the Hawks. Maybe they give the Hawks their pick back, and in exchange they get the Cavs pick. So you're moving down a little bit.
Oh.
The big caveat is then if you're the Spurs, you're losing your opportunity to be in the lottery because the Cavs probably make the playoffs. Hawks kind of trending towards not. Although maybe they could now. We'll see. So, but that's more low risk than trading a future first round pick, even if it's next year's.
No, I disagree with that. I think I'd rather have the highest possible pick this year because for them, like any chance at the lottery is so valuable, partially because they always move up, but they wouldn't with the Hawks pick in all likelihood. But I think I'd rather just make sure I have like the number 13 or number 14 pick. If the other option is trade a pick, I think is going to be in the 20s. I'd rather just do that.
Yeah. No, like the real pick though. Either way, like Porzingis Spurs, super interesting. Maybe
the real picks for San Antonio that matter are 26 this year, the swap with Atlanta, 2030 when they have dual swap with Dallas and Minnesota, and 31 when they have swaps with the Kings. I don't think the 28 Boston swap is that valuable.
Yeah, that's definitely their least valuable swap that they have out by far. No one would want that. They'd want other ones. Okay. Any other targets? Any other trades you had in mind for the Spurs?
No, just the truth is they should be happy with where they are. Like it's the Sam Presti quote all over again, where let us eat our breakfast before we start talking about lunch and dinner. Like, let's see how this run goes. I know like the players that they would have to move as matching salary if they did anything significant would be Harrison Barnes, who is like the leader of the locker room and like a great veteran to have a younger team who's been in a bunch of playoff battles. Keldon Johnson, who is utterly beloved on that team and is putting together a 6-man of the year type season. Devin Vassell, who's the best shooter on the team. Like, there's nobody who makes money except for Kelly Olynyk that you'd feel good giving up. And there's nothing out there in the Kelly Olynyk. Like, maybe you combine Olynyk and Sohan for something interesting. Like, I thought about like Olynyk and Sohan for Grayson Allen because I think the Suns probably do need to save a little bit of money because they have all of these free agents they have to re-sign this offseason. But I'm not crazy about Grayson Allen's contract long term. I don't think that's, especially when you have that many guards, like that's not really worth it. If there's someone you really like in the $20 million range, it doesn't seem like they're bringing back Sohan and they have Olynyk. Like maybe you do that, but I'm not disturbing the rotation in any meaningful way.
So to your point, yes, like the Pistons, the Spurs are playing with free money right now. No need to make a big trade that raises the stakes even more, adds a lot more pressure to the situation. I do think they'll trade Sohan. He's not in the rotation at all. Uh, Even with a bunch of injuries, I don't think he's been playing. So might as well just at least do him the favor, get him to a situation where he can play a little more. So I could see him getting rerouted to a bad team like Utah,
Charlotte makes a
something
lot
like
of
that.
sense. He can defend. He's a good defender.
Yeah.
He's athletic. I would love him in Charlotte. I think that'd be a good opportunity for him.
So this is also from Evan. This isn't exactly from him, but he proposed Sohan to the Knicks, and basically the trade would be, I kind of modified it. Yabusele and Pacome. What do you think about that?
I don't think they could justify playing Sohan with his shooting deficiencies. Because
The
the other thing
Knicks?
that's kind of quietly simmered, for the Knicks is that Karl-Anthony Towns hasn't been a good 3-point shooter in a year. Like not bad, but like last year, the first 3 months of the season, he's shooting 45% from 3. And then it comes out that he has like a bone chip in his thumb or whatever. And he shoots like 38% from 3 in the rest of the regular season and 35% from 3 in the playoffs and like 35% this year with especially bad numbers on wide open looks. You need Towns to be shooting like peak Towns to justify any minutes out of Sohan, and I just don't think you can offensively.
So maybe he could go to a 13, but what do you feel about Yabusele to the Spurs? He was one of their targets in free agency before they went with Cornette instead.
I don't think he would probably play. Like, I mean, it'd be nice to have on the deep bench, I guess, like if you like him, but maybe you could re-sign him for cheap, have him as a depth guy. I don't think he'd be in the rotation this year.
Yeah, I think it's just if you're gonna trade Sohan to get another third string, like for a different fifth big man, it's just like a very lateral move. Like, okay, you're getting Sohan the favor of getting him out there, and you bring in like another another undersized big man to maybe do a little better, maybe fits a little better. You're just switching the cards, switching the deck, reshuffling.
I had a listener email me a while ago and suggest the Spurs should do Tijan Salon for Jeremy Sohan because Salon is a friend of Wembanyama's from France. I think Salon has been playing a little bit better. I don't think the Hornets are going to be super eager to give him up. But when I got that email a few weeks ago or whatever, I was quietly a little bit intrigued. But I like the idea of Sohan in Charlotte if he does wind up getting moved. I think he makes sense for them.
So Sohan for something or Olynyk for something. They'll probably
or both of them for something like $20 million or so. And they have some room under they have 5 million, I think I said below the tax, 5.6 million. So you could trade like Olynyk and Sohan and get a $25 million player back if there's somebody you like. I'm just looking through the salary now, and I kind of just maybe like DeAndre Hunter. I don't know. Does that really appeal to you much? I don't think so. I'm looking at guards. I don't think there's really anybody in that range that
you just want an expiring guy. You want the guy to be expiring. You don't want to take on any long money.
Anthony Simons, but I don't think Boston's eager to give him up right now. Like unless they're doing something that saves them a ton of money, which I guess the Spurs could save them some money, but I don't think San Antonio is super eager. He's too small. I think they'd want somebody bigger. We don't really. It doesn't seem like there's a big move out there that really makes sense for them. I like the Goga Batadze thing. I like the Porzingis idea. If you could add another big just as insurance, I like that idea.
All right, Sam. I think it's time to end this episode. It is 3 a.m.
3 in the morning
where you are. We're over 2 hours now. Anything you want us to be on the lookout for?
Read CBS Sports. I have millions of trade deadline things coming out all the time between now and February 5th. So just read the website. All my good stuff is there.
All right, guys. And just subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe to the Substack. We will see you guys later this week.